Hi guys, welcome back aboard good old Athena. We are at anchor in Rio de Vigo in the northwest corner of Spain. We've been here for a little over a week waiting for some better weather to continue south, but we keep getting slammed by strong southwesterly winds and tons of rain. My name is Mess, this is my wife Ava. I've spent the last 5 years on a somewhat extensive refit of our 1987 Warrior 38 named Athena. That was a DIY fun-packed adventure complete with a very extensive osmosis treatment, building a new rudder using vacuum infusion, rebuilding the entire deck, gutting and subsequently rebuilding most of the interior, painting the topsides, and a ton of other projects. The summer of 2021 we started cruising full time. Now we're finally ready to begin our adventure. The anchorage we're in here is basically perfect for waiting out this bit of nasty weather, and with the addition of Starlink to the boat, we've just been kind of hiding out here inside of the boat watching Netflix, but we're slowly both starting to get the let's move on itch. In last week's video I touched on how, because there's no sun, we have to burn a bit of dinosaur squeezings to get energy. So thanks to the genset we've got plenty of energy, but this week we are out of water. We have a water maker aboard Athena, and that'll allow us to turn salt water into drinking water with energy from either the sun or from dinosaur squeezings. We picked the most comfortable of all of these anchorages in this weather, and that's way up here at the end. But unfortunately, the water we're bobbing around in up here is more like pea soup. Theoretically, the water maker can take this pea soup and turn it into drinking water, but there's some risk associated with that. Risk to the membranes, and those are expensive to replace. So we're gonna have to do something. I think our best option is to motor down to the mouth of the Rio down here on the second half of an incoming tide. That should give us reasonably nice quality water. And then once we've filled the tank, well, I think we'll just motor back up here because, yeah, like I said, I think this is going to be the most comfortable place to anchor in these conditions. And just like that, we are off. I think it's about 5 miles down to where we want to start the water maker, and that should take us about 45 minutes. There is a little bit of a, well, it's a stretch to call it a silver lining, but there is something good about having to motor, and that's the fact that we are charging our batteries while we are motoring. So that means when we get back to the anchorage, we won't have to run the genset tonight. Let's get this party started. Our water tank is completely empty. I think it's about 180 liters, so it should take us a little bit over an hour to fill it. Good. Outside of our cozy anchorage, the sea state started to get a bit bumpy, and the wind also increased quite a bit, gusting up to 38 knots. But after a few hours, we were back in the safety of our anchorage. We've celebrated our newfound water riches by doing the dishes, showering, and I have baked a cake. A quick little side note on water makers. There are basically two types. There is high power draw, high output, and then there is low power draw, low output, maybe with an energy recovery device. Which of the two categories is going to be the best choice for you is influenced by how you generate power on your boat and what's your general power consumption on the boat, and of course also your budget, because the low output, low power draw water makers with a clog pump are typically pretty pricey. Our water maker from Rain Man falls into the high power draw, high output category. In my eyes, that makes a lot of sense here aboard Athena because of the electric galley and the fact that we already had an inverter and also a genset that can power the water maker. Your mileage may vary, of course, but for us today, it was really nice to be able to just go outside of the anchorage, make a bunch of water real fast, and then just hurry on back. I am pretty sure this is going to come as a complete surprise to absolutely nobody, but I was a somewhat nerdy kid, and I remember being really into Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. That is such a fantastic book. Chapter 8 is called Vigo Bay, and that's because the Nautilus comes to this area right here, Vigo Bay. Now you might recall from last week's video, Ava was talking about the Battle of Rand and the giant treasure. And that treasure is of course the reason that the Nautilus comes to this area. I think I can say that without spoiling too much of the book. Right here behind me is a tiny island, and next to that island we've heard that there is a statue of Captain Nemo. Wanting to go to check that out led us to taking a closer look at the island and the history of that island, and it turns out it is almost as cool as 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
We are heading to San Simón, which is the island that Mads just mentioned. And it's very exciting because you had to apply, well, like most of the islands here in Spain, you have to apply to get access to go. And we applied over the weekend and we got the right away early in the week that we can go. So now we're heading there. It looks like rain today, which is a shame because yesterday was a beautiful day, but you had to put on the form which day you wanted to come, and we chose today, which of course looks like it's the rainy day.
We're coming up on the first stop of the day. This is the statue of Captain Nemo. I'm not normally one for statues, but I really like this one. I think it is so cool how it's placed out in the water, so to get close to it you have to come here at low tide. And also around the main statue there are two little divers. You can clearly see that this guy is carrying the treasure from the Battle of Rand. Yeah, 10 out of 10 statue. We got the dinghy tied up, and there's a security guard that let us in, and he checked our names on his phone or whatever. So I think if you want to come here, you definitely need to do the whole permit thing. He also gave us this. This is a little pamphlet thing that's in English, and there's a little map of the island here. We tied the dinghy up here. There's no sign or anything, so there's a bit of a confusion as to where to tie up. But if you come here, I think this is the spot.
The reason why I was really excited to come here because it's this teeny tiny island, but it has all of this crazy history. There is even some evidence found in sarcophagi that was excavated here in the rock that there was a ministry or some kind of religious order back in the 6th century. But of course, that was eventually destroyed by the Vikings. Mads.
Much like in last week's video, the rain is a clear and present danger. It's gonna be raining a lot today.
It's such a unique little island, and it was the inspiration of one of the most famous cantigas de amigos, which, if I'm correct, are songs written about boyfriends by men, but in the female perspective. And it was in the 13th century when the famous troubadour Mendinho wrote it about San Simón Island. And I'm not going to try and attempt the lyrics and butcher it, but critics say that the girl in his song was afraid by the waves of her own passion. And I can imagine why that was so famous. That was probably very steamy for the time. In the 1500s, the first documented monastery was built here on this island. It was used as the headquarters for the reform of the Franciscan order. And then, for the next hundreds of years, these poor monks would be driven away and come back to the island by a constant onslaught of looting by pirates. And then they would eventually be driven away for good by the French invasion in the 19th century. Fast forward to 1842, when this building behind me was built. It is a larzetto, or also known as a pest house. No, it is not for annoying people, but it is to quarantine maritime travelers. And it was really great for the area because it brought a lot of business, but it was not so great because it also brought a lot of cholera. But luckily, eventually, a vaccine for cholera was developed, so there was no more cholera, but that also meant no more business to this area, and the pest house eventually closed. Then the island had a few dark years. During the Spanish Civil War, it was used to hold political prisoners who were fighting for democracy. They were held in this building right behind me. But then, oddly enough, after the war, Francisco Franco, who was the dictator of Spain at the time, decided, hey, let's make this island a national hostel for all of his guards. But the whole hostel thing didn't last long because in a tragic event when a higher official allowed a boat coming to the island be overfilled to capacity, it sank on its way here, killing 41 passengers. Like I said, it was tragic and it was a really dark time for the island. But don't worry, the prison is not the end of this island's story. In 1955, they opened an orphanage here. Can you believe that? That is crazy to me. They even reused the prison buildings to house them. The orphans were children of sailors and families with low income, but it was only open a short time, and from 1963 until the mid-90s, the island was pretty much uninhabited.
It might have looked like it didn't rain in the video, but there is a lot of water in the dinghy. Before we head back to Athena, I just want to swing by the Captain Nemo statue because I think the tide's gone up a bit since we were there. Yeah, the water has definitely gone up a little bit. The first diver here is almost fully submerged. I think when it's high water, it's going to be up there somewhere. So the two divers are definitely not visible if you come here at high tide. We've had a very comfortable stay here at the top of Rio de Vigo, yeah. But it looks like tomorrow we might possibly, hopefully, have a weather window to go to Porto. So to prepare ourselves for that trip, we're going to go down to the mouth of the Rio today and anchor there and then cross our fingers for the weather tomorrow. Maybe that's some of the treasure from the Battle of Rand. Thusly freed of our treasure, we're now heading down towards the mouth of the Rio. Freeing us of that treasure, however, cost us one of our wireless lavalier mics. It went over the side, so that's kind of annoying. And when I said we had a comfortable stay here, that was true up until last night. We had our first ever anchor dragging situation. The anchor held fine, then we got a single gust of something around 30 knots, and we started dragging. I don't know why, but when we got back from making water, it took us, I don't know, like 20 attempts to get the anchor to set. And we were doing the exact same thing we've done, well, every single time we've anchored. So yeah, maybe this anchorage is slightly cursed. We're leaving our comfortable, although potentially slightly cursed anchorage up here, heading down the Rio, down to Bayona, I think that's how it's pronounced. We're going there so that the jump down to Porto tomorrow is going to be that little bit shorter. From here to Bayona, it's about 15 or 16 miles. And then tomorrow from Bayona to Porto, I think that's 65, something like that miles. So shaving off those 15 miles today is going to be really nice tomorrow. We made it to Bayona last night, and just as we were getting in, we got a text message from another Danish boat, Westwind. You might remember them from the video where we were in A Coruña. They're one of the boats that got attacked by orcas up there. But they've made it here to Bayona, and they're also heading towards Porto today. So we've arranged to make a little convoy. Westwind is in the marina, and they're ready to leave in about 5 minutes, so we better get the anchor up. I've made the route on the chart putter, and it looks like it's exactly 64 miles from here to Porto. There's not much wind forecast today, and what little wind there is supposed to be directly on our nose. But this is the best weather window we could get to Porto in the next week or so. So yeah, we better go today. There are two things on my mind today. One is orcas. The latest attack was down by Cascais, and that was roughly 2 days ago. So we could be in orca territory today. The second thing that's on my mind is fishing nets. We didn't hear it on the radio, but Westwind did, and there was an orca attack somewhere in this vicinity. I checked the WhatsApp group for people that are sailing this part of the coast, and yeah, it was immediately behind us up by those islands, so I'd say within 10 miles. You might be thinking, well, they're 10 miles away, that's pretty far, but I think an orca at full speed can manage something like 30 knots, something crazy like that. So yeah, if they're heading south, they'll scoot right past us, so fingers crossed they're heading north. We're about 20 miles in, and so far no orcas. Also, we have just crossed the border into Portugal, so new country ritual. Mwah! We're getting closer. I think we only have something like 5 or 6 miles to go. It's been a fairly long day out here, but we were just rewarded with a little dolphin show. And it's always so freaking awesome. It is slowly getting dark, which I don't think is an issue for the marina we're going to be going into, but it is certainly an issue for the stupid fishing nets. We've been dodging those things all day, and sometimes the little markers for them, they're just tiny and almost impossible to see. We got into the marina, we got the boat tied up, and we went to sleep. It's now about 4 in the morning, and the next set of high winds have come in. The office is closed here on Sundays, and the only place we could find to tie up was right at the entrance into the marina, so it is a tiny bit bumpy. I've put out our mooring compensators. Those help a lot. It's still bumpy, but they certainly help. And we've got a bunch of fenders out here. Every once in a while it looks like one of them is gonna pop up, but so far it hasn't been an issue. I think the next chance I get, I want to make another mooring line with a mooring compensator on, a nice long one, so we have one we can use for this spring. The marina we're in right now is about 4 or 5 nautical miles north of the city center of Porto. In a couple of days, when the winds have calmed down, I hope we can move to the one in the city center, because that's just a little bit closer to everything, and it's also closer to a store where I hope to be able to pick up a dive compressor. That is one of the last big items I would like to have aboard Athena, so it would be really nice to get that before we get to the US and the voltage is an issue and everything. So yeah. Ava's down below sleeping, so for the end of this video it will just be me. So as always, we hope to see you guys back here aboard Athena next week for yet more DIY/sailing fun. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like. See you!